Hey, everybody. Tim Stafford, Mike Erre. Welcome to the Voxology Podcast. Delighted, as always, to be with you. And thank you for the very helpful feedback on the Barbie episode.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was great. And, you know, my hesitation about just three dudes talking about Barbie evaporated in the light of your warm feedback. So
That's right.
that was awesome. And since then, my daughter's seen it again, so she's seen it 3 times.
Wow.
And then, yeah. And it was funny. We got into a great discussion. She's like, it's neither matriarchy nor patriarchy. It's partnership. Oh, come on.
See, and that's what we were talking about in the episode, too, is like with my kids who are younger than your kids, it has prompted curiosity and conversation.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's kind of the best thing that art can do is prompt people to explore on their own, inspire people to explore on their own. So in that light, that's a pretty good success on their part. Oh,
way beyond what meager expectations I had for such a film. Yes. I'm trying to
Greta Gerwig, the director, she's from Sacramento.
Of course.
She was just on Smartless, and she just seems delightful and just humble and excited about creating. And
wasn't she a philosophy major? Didn't I?
She was,
I thought I read that somewhere, like
philosophy and something else.
Political science, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't remember, but super smart. That's great.
Yeah.
We don't often recommend podcasts, other podcasts on here. We like to pretend we're the only show in town. But Smartless,
I think they all know about Smartless.
Yeah.
Man, last night we sat down and watched a few episodes. They filmed a road tour.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. And we were
hilarious.
My wife and I don't think we stopped laughing for a couple hours. Like
so
it felt so good.
They're all the way them in every aspect. Such a gift. And speaking of a gift, I got to be on the Holy Post with a little news segment last week.
It was good.
And so shout out to those guys and ladies. That was awesome.
It was a good convo. The conversation about the Chat GPT for what was it, like an Ask Jeeves almost or something?
Yeah. Ask Paul. Yeah. That was nuts. And Sky, brilliant as always, but Caitlin. Let's just talk about Caitlin.
She's a rock star.
Oh my goodness. Seriously. I cannot help but think, wow, I think the future of Christian scholarship, if we've got a bunch of those floating around out there, pretty awesome.
No, you guys brought up a point that she was wrestling through something now that most of us hit in our 40s, kind of wrestling with dogma and different things through the church, and I was like, that's so true. Like, I see a lot of that in the younger generation, that they are crossing bridges a lot earlier and asking questions a lot earlier, harder questions earlier than most of us did.
Totally.
So that does give me a lot of hope.
Yep, that's really good. So anyway, we're full of good tidings.
That's
and
right. Just
hearts
recommending podcasts left and right.
Full of cheer. Anyway, Tim, how are you? I know how you are. And so just as a prayer for mercy, no, do you want to share just how are you? How was your week this week? I mean, we record on Friday.
Yeah, my week was fine. It was just busy. We're in remodel mode, but and then school starting, and so it's just a very chaotic time period. But went out for pizza with good friends last night, and then, like I said, my wife and I watched the Smartless thing for a while and just laughed. And
love that.
Went to bed lighthearted, which is always nice.
Yeah. How many nights a week would you describe yourself as lighthearted as you approach bed?
Not most.
Yeah. That's fair.
I'm trying to get better at it.
Yeah.
I've been taking some good sleep aids. And I keep falling asleep. I normally won't fall asleep, first of all, and then second of all, if my wife comes in after me or anything like that, I wait.
Tim hasn't slept well in 40-something years.
That's right. But man, she came in there tonight and I had remixes of the song Lemon by U2 playing, my phone just laying on my chest, and I was out.
Wow.
It's just like, she came in, the lights were on, dance music was on, and I was not awake.
That's
she just
awesome.
Paused it and turned off the lights, went to sleep, and I woke up later like, wait, what's happening? So
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Tim and I also got to spend some time with our mutual friend at Lake Tahoe, right. And there was cavorting. There were deep discussions. It was great. All right. Enough about us, Tim.
Yes, finally.
Enough. We are picking up Revelation where we last left off. We were looking at the 7 churches, noticing that they exist on a spectrum of in great tension with the world around them, or not at all in tension with the world around them. And the 2 issues that were very much present in particularly the churches that were assimilating some sort of a false teaching around accommodating both sexual morality and eating food sacrificed to idols. And this was such a big deal to the early church, right? That was the only thing they decreed in Acts 15, right? The church was threatened, the church was under threat by people saying you had to be circumcised in order to follow the Jewish Messiah. And they said, no, we're not going to put stumbling blocks in front of the Gentiles. But out of respect for their brothers and sisters, who are Jews, we're going to ask them too. And it was like abstain from eating meat with blood in it, abstain from eating meat sacrificed to idols, and then sexual morality and idolatry. And which were big, I mean, of course, but this was like, these were things on the radar. Those are the greatest hits. These were the things on the radar of Paul and the epistle writers and Jesus in Revelation. And so we've been trying to filter that through. Okay, so what factors and forces are around us? Primarily, most of our listenership is in America, and it's the only context with which we are familiar. So, what are the issues that perhaps Jesus would look at our churches and point out? And one of them is power, and we talked about the wedding of political power. No matter what direction that political power is exercised, the wedding of Jesus following in political power is Antichrist. I mean, there's just no way to pull that sucker off. Yeah. And then we talked about money, which, man, that is the capitulation to culture, not only out there, but, for Tim and I as people who've been in churches and served in churches. And then the last one is sex. Money, sex, and power, the great idols of that age and this age. And they don't come to us in the forms of, meat sacrificed to idols, but they come much more subversively and much more quietly. And so I wanted to start by reading an email that really articulates well the goal of the conversation we want to have around sexuality. So this person gave me permission to share this. It's long, but so worth it. I'm relatively new to your podcast, having only begun listening regularly around the start of this year. I've been a Holy Post regular since mid-2015 or so, and through them I've been exposed to the wonderful world of voxological thought. I like voxological. That's a great word. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, explorations, and experience on so many topics of daily relevance to the modern American Christ follower. Most specifically, I wanted to thank you for your discussion of queer Christianity. This topic is important to me. And a week or so ago, I searched Spotify for Voxology LGBT or something along those lines to see what you guys had already covered regarding this topic. And I just actually a couple minutes ago visited your website to write this, and I saw you already had a playlist.
Look out.
I'll be going through that in the coming weeks. I greatly appreciate your even-handed stance. I myself am affirming /side A /heretical /progressive, etc., depending on who you ask, in my stance on same-sex relationships and how they play into our pursuit of God's kingdom on earth. Even though I don't necessarily agree with every interpretation I've heard on your podcast, I can't communicate how much I appreciate and value the culture of open-minded welcome you have cultivated. I can tell that regardless of your personal beliefs on the subject, and This is the goal. You and your guests genuinely long for shalom and well-being for all, affirming and unaffirming alike. This issue is especially important to me right now because of what's happening in my own church. I'm a recent member of the Christian Reformed Church, and the past 2 weeks have been difficult as our church has reignited a conversation around queer people's place in our denomination. Last year at our annual synod meeting, the majority voted in favor of giving confessional status to an interpretation of the word unchastity that includes same-sex relationships. In essence, they voted to be CRC. You must come into alignment with the stance of condemning same-sex behavior, regardless of whether or not it's in a loving monogamous relationship. It's brought great division into our denomination, and this year many, many proposals were brought to reconsider, delay, or lessen this decision. All were denied, and now many of our congregations, mine included, must develop a plan for the future. Will we split? Will we stay? On whom is this burden going to fall? Whom will it most impact? We're so confused and divided right now. It breaks my heart. I just joined this denomination. I don't want to abandon it yet. I'm queer. If I marry another man, synod voted that singular fact outweighs every other orthodox belief I hold, and I am a confessional heretic with no home in the CRC. I've already gone through the gauntlet of growing up closeted in an unaffirming community. I know I'll just likely spend the rest of my life defending my positions against proof texts. It sucks to see this becoming a dividing wedge in my church. And Tim said,
Amen.
My goal in communicating this is that you made me aware of the hope that you have given me for a better third way. The muddy middle, as you've called it, is where I usually find myself in our increasingly polarized world. I love the Lord, and as much as our divided world tells me that my queerness is incompatible with my faith, my God is more essential to me than any other part of who I am. When it comes to this issue, I know two things. God loves me, and I'm queer. My desire is that my church find a way to make space for all of us. We love God, and I don't want this issue to be what identifies us, not whether we are affirming or not. I don't know what the path forward is. By God's grace, he will see us through this. So years ago, when we started this podcast in 2015, the goal was to create, the way we said it, and it's changed over the years, but the way we initially said it was the church should be the safest place to talk about anything. Mm-hmm. And the church is supposed to love and serve the world, not sit in judgment of it. And you put those two things together, and you're hoping to create a place of hospitality and welcome. And our audience is great because they call us out when we don't. On many occasions. You guys have come across as mean or hurtful or contemptuous, and we receive those, and we want to read all of those, on episodes to be corrected. It's not an easy thing. I was inspired by this person's affirmation because as we've navigated and talked about sexuality many times over the course of the last 8 years, the hope has been less about all coming into agreement and more about coming to a welcoming and hospitable posture towards one another. And so as we go into this conversation yet again, that email coming in was such a great reminder for me as I was, prepping all of this material of what the goal is. The goal isn't that we all think the same way or that you agree with me. Obviously, we share our opinions, and lots of studying goes into that and so on. But that's not a litmus test of siblingship,
right.
nor should it be. So all that is to say, we want to talk, and I don't know if I've got 20 pages of notes, and I'm not sure, 17 pages of notes. And I'm not sure we'll get all to it today. I know. Well, there's a lot to say, Timothy. And just from the front, we're not talking about transgender issues right now. Oh. We're not talking about the holiness or not of LGBTQ sexual acts. We want to do what we've done with money and we want to do what we've done with power, which is to look at the predominant narratives and ask, how have I and how have our communities been shaped by them? And so I'm less concerned about articulating doctrinal position as I am about holding up the ways culture, Christian and non, is talking about sexuality, to just be curious about, is this really everything that it's claimed to be? So I want to get that out of the way. We've talked about LGBTQ stuff, and if you're interested in our views on those sorts of things,
enough that there's a playlist.
That there is a playlist. Yeah. So, and the reason we want to have this conversation is because culture's having it. Obviously, our kids are having it way earlier than any of us parents thinks they're understanding or the conversations being had. And there is a great deal of conflicting information that it's given to our young folks regarding sexuality. In fact, Beth Felker Jones wrote a book called Faithful, which is a very thoughtful articulation of traditional sexual ethics, celibacy within heterosexual marriage, or celibacy within marriage. Celibacy.
Oh, wow, she's very conservative.
Right. Well, yeah, there are some who would say celibacy. No, but celibacy unless you are in heterosexual marriage. Thank you for the clarification. And it's a very. I love that it's a woman articulating it because she sees the holes in purity culture and the ways Christians have done that. But she opens her book with what I thought was a really interesting example. She said her big point is that sex is real and that it matters. That's it. And she says a lot of people have a stake in pretending that sex doesn't matter. So, and she uses the example of food. We all know that food matters, right? I mean, diet culture and health culture and doctor culture, I mean, that's all over everywhere.
Yeah.
But she said, suppose a child were talked to about food in the way that we talk to children about sex. The commands that they might hear or the story that they might have been told would sound a little bit like this. It doesn't matter what you eat or don't eat. It doesn't matter. So we're saying, and notice the echoes to how some people talk about sexuality. It doesn't matter what you eat or don't eat. Eating has nothing to do with your health. Suppose a child were given these messages around food. Food is just for the body. What really matters is your psychological health. Bodies and eating have nothing to do with that. Food is a private matter. If you have a taste for something, you should eat it, lots of it. Whatever you eat in the privacy of your home is your decision. It doesn't affect anyone else. Don't ask where your food comes from. Nobody gets hurt in the production of your food. Nothing you eat can hurt you. Nothing you eat will help you flourish. You might like broccoli, but that doesn't mean it's good for you. It just means it's your personal preference. Mm-hmm. Food should always make you happy. Pleasure is the only reason for eating. And we hear those messages regarding food and we think, well, that's not at all how we should be talking about food, right? What you eat does matter a great deal. It's real and it matters.
We're all learning that in our midlife.
Oh, some of us more than others, Timothy. And she goes on to say, well, imagine that's what you're told by church and culture regarding sex, right? Doesn't matter what you do or don't do. It has nothing to do with the health of your body. It has nothing to do with your psychological or spiritual health. It's a private matter. If you like something, go for it. Whatever you do in the privacy of your own home is up to you. There's no effects other than that. Don't ask where pornography and other things comes from. Nothing you do with sex will hurt you. Nothing you do with sex will help you flourish. I mean, that's kind of the picture that we're given. On one extreme is that sex isn't real and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
On the other extreme, of course, are the Christians who take that idea and run with it in sometimes very harmful ways. So what I want to do is by the end of this, I want to have three sets of categories that talk about the story that I was raised in the church, the story that I hear in our world, and then a story that I think better reflects what God is doing with bodies and why bodies in the text. But before I get to those stories, Gambas taught me something years ago. Whenever you're talking about a very controversial issue, to situate yourself. Who am I and what community am I a part of? And to sort of name that situation. We talked about in the Bible series, situating ourselves before the text, right? So, when I sit down to read the Bible, I am part of a global military superpower. That I need to name that. I am wealthy by world standards.
Can you explain why this posturing is important?
Because we're trying to practice hermeneutical humility. We're trying to let the text speak to us rather than carry in our categories and presuppositions for the text.
So this is for the reader, so that when you go in, you're aware of the lenses that you are bringing to the text.
Well said. Yes. Yeah, that could distort your understanding of it, right? So I'm an individualist. I'm a consumer. I am white, male, and heterosexual, so I'm in the majority culture.
Yes.
The Bible is written by people who are not majority culture people. They were often oppressed by global military superpowers, and they write from the perspective of a very persecuted minority. I have to work to enter in to that reality, whereas people in the Sudan don't, or Christians in Syria don't. So I want to do the same thing when it comes to sexuality. So, for some, this might be just an exercise in whatever, but for me, it's really important to name who I am and what community I'm a part of. So first of all, I am beloved by God in my brokenness. I'm a guest at Jesus's table, and I don't have the right to determine who gets to sit there. I am a gift recipient who comes humbly. Secondly, I come with logs in my eyes. So we don't have time or interest to go into all the ways I have fallen short in sexual ethics as taught in the New Testament. But they are legion, they are many, and so if there are specks floating around out there, I have to acknowledge the log in my own eye first.
Totally.
So I just acknowledge from the outset, sinful, broken, flawed, things I've done to myself, things that others have done to me, things I've done to others.
Right.
All of that. Of what community am I a part? Well, I am part of a community that is called to offer hospitality to the outcasts and marginalized, right? To practice new creation dynamics that don't divide the world in the way that the world divides the world. Secondly, I'm part of a community that, in my deep opinion, or not deep, but sincere opinion, has done real harm to LGBTQ people in the name of Jesus. They have been wounded and are wounded and set up in the worst possible state to figure these deep things out, cut off often as they are from family and church.
Yeah.
I'm part of a community in the American church that regularly fails to include single, divorced, and gay people and holds up heterosexual marriage as kind of the spiritual ideal for Christians. I am part of a community that is focused on sexuality disproportionately relative to its emphasis in the scriptures. So you look at how much we talk about sexuality in the West versus how much we talk about money. And that will tell you everything you need to know. Exactly. And I firmly believe that I'm also part of a community that has lost any authority to instruct others on sexual matters. And the reason is that, of course, is our own hypocrisy.
Yeah.
Mine and others. So what I want to do, rather than say and declare to the world, this is what you must believe, what I want to do is practice using Tim as a dear friend and my own thoughts as foil for him to react to. And just say, here's how I've come to think about it as I've thought about evangelical culture and I've thought about non-evangelical culture. And so I'm not offering this as, this is my best, though very oversimplified thinking about sexuality as a white 52, 51, 50?
Wow.
37-year-old man.
Is that a negotiation?
It's like Abraham negotiating for Sodom and Gomorrah. Will you love me if I'm 10? All right. So that's 26 minutes of disclaimers.
Yeah.
But they seem really important, Yeah. So I want to ask the question, Timothy, because this will not shock anybody who's a regular listener. What does it mean to be human? And as we talk about what it means to be human, then perhaps we might be able to discern the ways that the modern narratives around sexuality have sort of stepped or distorted outside of that vision. So, and this, Rob Bell, man, way back in the day, Robert Bell Jr., Reverend Robert Bell Jr., wrote a book called Sex God. And first I thought it was a biography. But then secondly, I realized he had some really creative thinking around sexuality. And I'm fairly certain he would disagree with some of his thinking now as opposed to what he wrote then. But there was a central chapter in that book that changed the way I look at sexuality. Instead of looking at the do's and the don'ts, I looked at what does it mean to be human. So that's the inspiration for this next little bit here. So we're going to read a very familiar text, Genesis 1. God said, "Let us make mankind." Now, it's not mankind as we've talked about, it's humanity. It's Adam. And Adam can be singular and plural. It can refer to a gendered male. It can refer to the human, species as a whole. It's like the word man, right? The old use of the word man. The word man could mean a man or it could mean mankind. So Adam is better translated the human or the human race. So God created the human race. Let us make the human race in our image and in our likeness. And we got to get to those words in a second. So they may rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, livestock, the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. So God created humanity in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea, birds of the sky, every living creature that moves on the ground." Now, we could spend days, I tell you.
Days.
I'm prepping for a series at our church on Genesis 1 this fall. So when I say there could be days, good Lord, I'm so oversimplifying here. But to move the thing along, let's just keep going. So the poetic routines of Genesis 1 are interrupted on days 3 and 6, and they tie together in a beautiful way that we don't have time to explore. But here we read this is the first time we've read about the idea of God creating in the image of something. Now, it'll say about the animals, God created them according to their own kind. But this is the first time we've come across this idea that whatever is being created is created as an image. Selim is the Hebrew word, or a likeness. Demut, I think is how you would pronounce it. And Selim in Hebrew just means a statue found in a temple. It's a likeness of God. It's like you would walk into ancient temples and there would be statues of the god, and that would be an image of the god. It was the visible representation of the invisible deity. And the visible representation was supposed to tell you something about the invisible deity. They were an expression of sovereignty. So when you walked into a temple and you saw a selim or an image or a statue, you knew that God owned this place and was to be, was the preeminent sort of ruler over this physical location. And so selim was a common word, evidently, in the ancient Near East that just meant something that represented a deity, usually found in a temple in the form of a statue.
Yeah.
The thing that's so crazy is that rather than priests or kings, who were typically named images of the gods, it was the whole human race named image of the gods.
Yeah, that'll ruin power dynamics a little bit.
Oh my Lord. Ancient Near Eastern scholars, at least that I read, go crazy on this point. There's nothing in ancient culture like this. And that's really true when you look at the Babylonian account or the Egyptian accounts or the Canaanite accounts. There is nothing like this. All of those accounts are written to justify the divinity of the people in power.
Totally.
This account is written to justify the uniqueness of every single human being in a role over creation. It's just utterly revolutionary. And not only that, but this image is displayed in a plurality. So it's interesting. How many species of humans are there? There's just one, right? There's one human being. It's a species. But in the image of God, God created him, that is human. But of what does human consist? Male and female. He created plural, them.
Yeah.
Right? So the singular human species is manifested in the plural, male and female. Make sense? Mm-hmm. So the way that it's written in Genesis 1 highlights the fact that a crucial part of the image of God is the maleness and the femaleness, this gender difference. And it's the sense that human beings are one and more than one all at the same time, right? I am a singular human, and yet in the image of God, male and female are required to fully bear the image. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Can I ask what might be a very dumb question?
No dumb.
Do you know, so if I was Jewish and was going to the synagogue now, currently, the scripture that they hold and read that we call the Old Testament, do those track evenly, or did our Old Testament change at all from what the Jewish foundational scripture was?
Oh, that's a great question. From my very limited awareness, from what I understand, that there are books that are rearranged, as Amy Jill Levine has, said.
It's funny. I woke up in the middle of the night last night with this question in my head. In the middle of the night, and I was like, I should have asked AJ that, and then went back to sleep. Totally. So let's save it for her. But yeah. From my understanding, no, that it is substantially the same material, and that Jewish scholars and Christian scholars work off of the same generally agreed upon manuscripts. Like original texts.
Well, they're not originals, but there are manuscript traditions that then you read variants off of.
Gotcha.
And so yeah, obviously interpretation of these differs, right, in a lot of ways. But and one of the great gifts I would highly recommend to people who study the Bible for a living is to read Jewish scholarship on the Old and New Testaments. There's a lot of great Jewish scholarship that's not Messianic Judaism on Jesus.
Right. Yeah.
And it's super interesting. Amy Jill is a great example of that. So there's this weird, you did everything? All right, Hannah's leaving. She looks like she's going to go see her boyfriend, Judah. So she's smiling. It's different. It's different than how she...
Mazzy interruption just to keep all the daughters, and here she comes.
Oh, we love the daughters, man.
She was warned not to do this, but here she is.
Yeah, here she is. Hi, Mazzy. Oh, she can't hear me, but there's this beautiful thing that's happening in Genesis, where it's like, in some way, that those two, male and female, are one and become one, is really important of how, and is connected to how they image God. So like a central part of sexual ethics in the Old Testament is the idea that the male and the female are required to image God. And when they join together, they image God in the best way possible. And so that sex is the joining together of the image of God in ways that, Genesis 2 sort of hints at and portrays. So, and there's a whole lot of other things. I just wanted to like draw attention to the idea that the Hebrew in this poem is playing off of this idea that there's one human and there's two humans, and that they're both, like, the singular human is male and female in some plurality. And obviously that's rich fodder for Christians to read back into and develop the idea of the Trinity. But grammatically, no matter how, your views on the Trinity, how they come about, like, this is just super interesting that the male-female split and reunification are a central part of imaging God. Now, all the questions about, well, what about homosexual sexual relations or transgender people? Man, I get all of those. And to a lot of degree, I don't know. This is not something I am in any way, shape, or form qualified to talk about. I've read loads of books, particularly transgender issue. I don't know. And I would want to do that. I want to have a much more intelligent conversation than what I can get into. So for now, let's just say that's the story that's being told.
Right. That
humanity they are image bearers, and that in their maleness and femaleness, they bear the image. The command is, of course, is to fill the earth, which is to reproduce. And, the rabbis would have a field day of the 613 commands. The first one is to have sex. And implied in that is to have sex and to be created and to have physical reproductive organs. That's very good, as God sort of decrees over that. So in just that little bit in Genesis 1, you get the beginnings of an idea that human beings are more than just bodies. Mm-hmm. And there to complete the trifecta is Seth Erre.
Hey.
One of you, I don't remember who emailed us in, but was very kind and said, hey, we love that your children get included in all of this. And, it's not.
And so do we.
Well, yes. Hi, Seth.
Hi.
Can we tell everybody it was your first day of school today?
Yes.
So I don't know why in Tennessee they decided that August is a school month, which is ridiculous.
And then Friday being
and then Friday half day is the first day of school. So whatevs, man.
Whatevs.
We got up early, didn't we?
Yep.
Did you do anything fun? I saw a video of you playing human Hungry Hippo.
Yeah.
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 Nice. Did you do anything fun?
Yes.
Okay. Elaborate. What did you do?
I did was.
You did lunch?
Yep.
Okay. What else?
With my son, to Nicholas.
Oh, you sat next to Nicholas, your friend?
Yeah.
Nice.
It's hard to Seth.
And your best buddy Seth. Yeah, he has his best buddy Seth there.
Yes. And Sophia.
Oh, did you see Sophia?
Yeah.
Last year at the end of the year, he sang at the kind of school closing. He sang from The Greatest Showman. What's the song you sang? This Is Me. And then he proclaimed his love for Sophia in front of the whole school. So glad that has still... And Anna Timmons, yes, we will not... Yes. So there are crushes every direction. All right. Sevi, I'm going to keep going.
Yes. Keep going.
Okay? Because...
11 on Ocean.
No, this is not Revelation. This is actually... See, you're so smart. We're covering Revelation.
Yeah.
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 So good, dude. So good. Come here, genius. All right. We're back, Sevi. We're back. So there's a sense already that to be embodied is to be really good. And that of all the ways that God could, decree that humans reproduce, turns out like it's fun. When you get to Genesis 2, and again, I'm so oversimplifying here, but the Lord God formed a man. Now, again, it's an Adam, a human, formed from the dust of the ground, which is called the Adama. So Adam and Adama is a wordplay in Hebrew. The man is kind of like the dirtling or the earthling, to use an Eddie Vedder, album title. The Lord God formed a human from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. Now, as has been commonly noted, breath, wind, and spirit are all the same word in Hebrew. So there's a whole truckload that we could get into there, but the idea is the human one became a living being. So the man is made, or the human is better. The human is made of dust, and the human is made of breath, wind, spirit, right? It's some sort of hybrid.
Yeah.
And there's a beautiful Psalm 8, that reflects on this hybrid nature of the human. It begins by saying, Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. It's a great song lyric. Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. You have set your glory in the heavens. Through the praise of children and infants, you have established a stronghold against your enemies to silence the foe and the avenger. When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and stars, which you've set in place, what is humanity that you are mindful of them? Human beings that you care for them. You have made them, and notice this spatial language, you've made them a little lower than the angels and crowned them with glory and honor. You have made them rulers over the works of your hands and put everything under their feet. And then he talks about the animals. All flocks and herds, animals of the wild, birds in the sky, fish in the sea, all that swim the paths of the seas. So this is what the esteemed Reverend Robert Bell Jr. Pointed out, is that in the biblical story, humans aren't angels and they aren't animals. There's some hybrid. Angels evidently can manifest physically, but the physical part of them isn't essential to their nature. And animals, though creaturely and have, personality and intelligence, don't have that same breath of life that reflects the image. They don't image God the same way. And so the human beings are kind of in spatial language lower than the angels and higher than the animals. And the idea that animals are just sort of slaves to instinct and desire and physical craving, and that angels don't have physical craving or desire, which is, debatable based on how you read Genesis 6. But there's a sense in which Bell was pointing out something that stuck with me ever since, which is there is this hybrid nature to what it is to be humans. We're not fully spiritual, we're embodied creatures, and we're not just embodied creatures. There's something more to us than that. Yes, Sethi, we see the mustache. Upstairs. I love you. Go, Seth Erie.
Dude, we forgot.
What?
I get a wipe.
You get a wipe?
Yeah.
Oh, to wipe your chocolate milk mustache. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about the nature of human beings. Mazzy and Seth. Beautiful examples. So, God didn't create us angels, and he didn't create us animals. We're some hybrid of the physical and spiritual. And so, come here, we're wiping off the mustache. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. Give me a little time, son, all right?
Okay.
We're on page 6 of 16. Is this making sense?
Yeah, and it's interesting now too, since we've talked so much about new creation and the idea of being resurrected bodies, not just being these spiritual things. So there's a lot in there.
Where you're going, Stafford. You see it coming. So one of the sexual stories that's told in our world comes from the church, and it's the angelic story. That we're just supposed to be angels, and we don't have, and it's disembodied spirituality.
These bodies don't matter.
Yeah,
et cetera.
And then, in another way, we're told the animal story, where all we are just desires, preferences, and cravings, and anything that tells us to restrict those is bad and harmful.
Yeah.
Now, this is way oversimplified, but it's just a way that we're trying to talk about porneia, which is this word that is used in Revelation that has an interesting translation history. It meant and referred to lots of different things, but ultimately became a catch-all for sex outside of covenant marriage. And so in trying to deal with the question, okay, so we instantly go to the whats and the whos and the hows and how fars. We want to start the question a little different place to say, okay, so the scripture opens with this male and female being naked and unashamed, and they're to form some sort of kinship group. A man will leave his father and mother, be united to his wife, and they will become one flesh. Now that's a reference to the sex act, but it's bigger than that. It's a reference to the new kinship unit that they produce. And so you have, on the one hand, over-spiritualizing this from Christians and under-spiritualizing this from people who are not. And so I want to just kind of rehearse the angel story, the story that says, we shouldn't have these bodily impulses and they're dirty, naughty, bad. And I want to rehearse the animal story that just says we're glands and hormones, and that's all we are. And in both cases, both people say sex doesn't matter. They just say it in much different ways. So does that make sense? I'm trying to it looks so good on my notes, but stuff to convey.
We were talking this morning about just, again, how much mystery and curiosity is being provoked and we're being invited into in just faith topics, and how much scripture does that too. And so the way you just laid that out, as we walk in, there's so much power to be had in ignorance and people remaining ignorant or
humility.
Yeah. So the idea of being invited in, hey, both of these are encouraging a very simplistic approach to this that are serving in some way or the other, but they are missing the breadth of the whole thing. And that's where we're, again, encouraged to have a broad imagination or a big curiosity walking in, because it is bigger than, but you can see how control is used or power over is used in keeping these things really, really simplistic and which is like an ABC checklist to hit and then walk away from it.
Yep. And I'm oversimplifying. So I'm even guilty of it too, just to even try to make some of the points along the way.
I think you're doing a good job of saying this has been simplified in a dangerous way. And while we don't have the time to fully open it up, we're saying, hey, we want to start from a little bit of a different starting place than the norm.
So what does it mean to be human? It's to be some sort of spiritual, right? Spiritual being just means of the spirit, right? The breath of life. And we're embodied. And we have penises and vaginas and all the desires and hormones that go with them.
Yeah.
And so
it's really interesting.
It is. So when we get to, we're going to explore the two stories that, are the oversimplified and common ones, and then we'll explore the more nuanced one. And I don't know that we'll all do this episode or be able to. But the goal would be that we're just trying to model how we would question the stories around money, sex, and power that we're told.
Yeah.
In their most popular forms. Now, when we get to the angel story of, our bodies are bad, our bodies are to be escaped from, our bodies are our downfall, Like that's the angel story. This is a story as old as the New Testament. It was really crystallized in a 2nd century heresy called Gnosticism. And Gnostic thought existed in the 1st century and much earlier than that. The word gnosis with a G is a word for knowledge. And Gnostics believed that there was knowledge of the spiritual realm that would save you into something called the fullness or the pleroma. That there were, and Gnostics were very much an insider sect. They believed that they possessed this secret knowledge, and to have the secret knowledge was to have salvation. And so they believed, in essence, there were 2 gods, one greater God and one sort of demigod or lesser God. One God created the immaterial world, the spiritual world, and a lesser God created the physical world. So there was this, it's known for its big dualism, that has a dualism between the physical and the non-physical. And it's hierarchical dualism because the non-physical is better than the physical. So there's no way the same God, in their thinking, could have created the spiritual and the physical, because the physical is dirty and naughty, it's tarnished, it's the lowest level of God's fullness. And this is super complicated. So I'm trying not to get hung up on the details, but what we need to know is that in Gnostic thought, the bodies were secondary. So you could either ignore them and discipline them to try to escape them, or you could give in to them because it didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was what happened to the spirit part of you in the spiritual realm after you died. And so death is a good thing in Gnostic thought because it's necessary to separate the non-physical part of you from the physical part.
It's crazy how Gnostic our modern church has become.
Oh my Lord, on everything.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I mean, yes. Yeah. Let me cut a little more at this. The Gnostics, and again, there is no such thing as the Gnostics, but there are some generally true characteristics. Your soul would have to ascend into the immaterial realm, and it would have to pass through various planetary spheres. 7 seems to be a very common number of those, and each of these was ruled by something called an archon, I think is how you pronounce it, which was a demon in charge of each planetary sphere. And there were gates. You had to pass through the gates, and the secret knowledge was the way to get past the demons and through the gates and so on. And that you would enter more fully into the kingdom of light, and you would escape
after each
from
gate. Like, are you ascending further more into the
Yes. So from what I understand, a very common Gnostic belief is that, and this is what Paul's arguing against in Colossians when he uses the word fullness. The word fullness is the word pleroma. And pleroma for the Gnostics was like the light, the kingdom of light. It was the divinity, was the pleroma. And all of creation reflected the pleroma. The physical world reflected it least. The immaterial world reflected it in increasing steps as you ascended past each of these gates.
Yeah.
So when Paul talks about the fullness of the deity living in Jesus, like that's like, even John will say things like, anyone who denies that Jesus came in the flesh is not of God. I mean, they were warring against very early stages of Gnostic thinking. And you can see why Gnostic thinking, and even when Paul writes to Corinth had this Gnostic thing down to a T, because some of them were indulging with temple prostitutes thinking it's just my body.
Yeah, totally.
Right? And they had this slogan, food for the stomach and the stomach for food.
Yep.
And there were other Corinthians who said, no, even in marriage, you should be celibate, because sexual activity, embodied activity, is the lowest form of spirituality. It actually wars against spirituality. And so Paul has to deal with actually the angel and animal stories right there, but they're both they're both residing in Gnosticism, which said there is a difference between the you that inhabits the shell and the shell that carries you around.
Totally.
The meat bag is not important, and it's an obstacle. So you can either ignore it or indulge it. But this kind of thinking, and then it was mixed in with some parts of Christianity, some parts of Judaism, some parts of Platonism and Mithrandiism. Not Mithrandiism. I think that's the Lord of the Rings version of that. Mithraism. Mithrius. Anyway, all that is to say, the material world was bad. The spiritual world was good. And so the sexual desire was an unredeemed feature of the dark world, right? And so, of course, our bodies don't matter, so we can either indulge them or, we need to denigrate them and ignore them. And so what happened, we developed kind of a Gnostic hangover where we have an over-spiritualized view of sexuality. That is what I grew up with. Mm-hmm. And this over-spiritualized view of sexuality is given great voice by John Piper in one of his papers on the Desiring God website. I think it's called "What Would You Say to a Young Man Who is Considering Sleeping with His Girlfriend?" He says, well, a second approach to answer that question is to say, and then I'm quoting what he says here, don't you, that Christ died for your sins, all of them, including your future fornication. When you penetrate this woman, you thrust a sword into Jesus' side. Think about that. Do you want to do that?
Wow.
All your sins, if you're a Christian, are on him. Every new sin you commit is a fresh sword thrust into the side of Jesus. Yeah. Keep that in your mind. This pleasure that you're getting is murdering the Son of God. Don't do it lightly.
Terrible imagery.
No wonder we're all just so jacked up.
Seriously.
Right? And I mean, I never heard anything about what to do with desire.
Yeah.
Other than don't.
Totally. Absolutely.
Don't.
Yeah.
It's totally the angel view. Guys, bodies are bad. Desires are bad. Penises and vaginas are bad. Stay away from them until we flip a switch and then you get a legal piece of paper.
Yeah.
But yeah, and even the word flesh in Paul's writing was always misunderstood to just mean being body. Just being bodily and embodied.
So frustrating because then the obvious delineation out of here is how much abuse has happened, how much sexual abuse has happened that because of an ideology that says this is just about a carnal thing.
Yep.
And I can take what I want or whatever, you can just see the delineation out of this of just,
Yep. So the Gnostic story led to an overly spiritualized view of sex, where, and this is the big critique of Josh Butler's book.
I was just thinking about that.
Is that, sex is like unlocks the meaning of the universe or something.
Right. Yeah.
And I think, Paul uses, and the Bible writers do use sex to illustrate spiritual realities. No question about that.
There's just not a period at the end of that idea.
Well, yeah. I think it's more nuanced than that, but the over-spiritualization of sex then leads to a bounded set approach to sex. Mm-hmm. So, sex in junior high becomes all about the rules and the regulations because if you have sex outside of marriage, something very spiritually damaging is happening to you. Mm-hmm. And
then there's how that conversation is approached for both boys and girls.
Yes.
Which we had with Sheila and Rebecca talking about like the wedding dress, the gum on the wedding dress, or that kind of stuff, which is not how we were as boys were talked to about it.
No. So the Gnostic story leads to an overly spiritual view of sex, which leads to an overly rigid set of bounded rules. So I'm referring back to when we talked about bounded sets, fuzzy sets, centered sets. We won't rehash all of that. But the idea is that for sexuality, there was focus on the boundaries. And the question we all asked as junior high boys was, how far can we go?
Yep.
And then proceeded to walk, a couple of steps beyond that. But it was all boundary laden. There wasn't any conversation about what it means to be human, or why did God give us desire, or nothing. It was simply, look, bad things happen spiritually when you do it outside of marriage. And so you've got to restrict it, and here are the rules.
Yep.
And that led naturally to purity codes. And that's what they were. They're Levitical purity codes that we call purity culture, right? The goal was getting to the wedding night a virgin. The way you did that was abstaining. The manner in which that was conveyed was through threats and bribes. and that, right? That it's so important that if you step outside of God's blessing, there are venereal diseases, and there's insecurity and jealousy of multiple partners. And you're spiritually attaching yourself to other people. And if you wait, God has this great and joyous gift, he wants to give you. And
called confusion.
Well, it wasn't there were parts I wish were a bit nuanced in that story. And the problems with this, of course, is that marriage was a reward and sex was a reward for obedience, which, man, that energizes the whole purity conversation for men and women in ways that are super unhealthy, because I'm entitled to it if it's a reward.
And it can set up a really uneven platform for the two who are joining, if their stories don't match. That
was the question I got most as a college pastor.
Yeah.
The problem is it understands purity as an attribute that bodies possess and that you can have or lose.
Yeah.
And it's a one-time thing. I've talked to people who were date raped, and they said, well, I lost my virginity, so why not? Yeah. And you're like, that's the Christian vision. It turns bodies into commodities where some are more valuable than others. And obviously this applies way more to women than to men. I coached football for years, and I had two guys I remember telling me they wanted to sleep around but marry a virgin. And and it just fit. There it is, ladies and gentlemen.
It's power, possession.
Yeah. Oh. So Beth Felker Jones, she kind of outlines 4 either spoken or unspoken rules that kind of undergird our purity codes. I can expect to get married as my reward for following the rules. I need to grit my teeth and work hard to avoid sexual intercourse before my wedding night to preserve the value of the merchandise. The whole thing is probably more important for girls than for boys, and possessing my physical virginity makes me pure. Problem is, women never hear, or they always hear, that they are the problem. They never hear that men are. Mm-hmm. They receive the body, and this is all stuff we talked about with Sheila and Rebecca. Their bodies are dangerous. They're responsible for weak men and their sin.
Yeah, someone was floating around a meme, and this was a real thing, that was like, it was an article written by a pastor or somebody that was like, should women have butts? It's just what they're talking about. All based in that ideology of like...
Yeah. Yep. But I mean, do you see the Gnosticism in all of this, right?
Yeah, totally.
Virgin and non-virgin become value and identity statements.
Absolutely.
Women's bodies... this is Beth speaking. Women's bodies are not prizes, and they're not valuable because they maintain purity. There is no claim or guarantee that Christians will have the best sex ever, or that following the rules will guarantee mind-blowing sex.
Yeah.
she continues, your body is not merchandise. It's not a valuable item that will be used up or spent if you have sex. Having sex does not devalue a body. The bodies of married, sexually active people are every bit as pure as the bodies of virgins. So one of the really surprising things that as I was a pastor to young adults in a young church is how many people had a hard time turning the switch on from, hey, it's dirty, naughty, and bad.
Yes.
To, oh, it's okay now.
Yeah. There's a whole generation of us.
Yeah. I mean, just absolutely insane. So the angel story is Gnostic worldview that over-spiritualizes the sex act, which means that you have to enforce boundaries and you proclaim this in a bounded way. And the way you do that is through purity codes. But ultimately, what it teaches us is to fear sexual desire. Right? And in the history of the church, this has been the predominant relationship of the church to sexual desire. I mean, Origen, early church theologian, actually followed through on the idea of being a eunuch for the sake of the kingdom. Right? Jerome, he created the Latin version of the Old Testament called the Septuagint, like one of the most significant pieces of literature ever. I mean, he learned Hebrew as a way of repressing all of his sexual energy. And taught that Mary, the reason there is this perpetual virginity around Mary is that if Mary had sex after Jesus, that would somehow pollute her and her holiness. Augustine, God bless him, said that original sin was passed through the act of sex. So you just have this incredible fear combined with the call to willpower, and that is what holiness is reduced to purity, and purity is reduced to virginity.
Yep.
So I think we can agree that has failed miserably.
Yeah, it has caused a lot of actual physical damage in people's lives.
Yes.
And I think we're seeing that now really pop out with all of the abuse that has come out of, obviously the Catholic Church, but also with youth pastors and people who are towing this line and just don't know how to. Yeah, what a mess.
What a mess. So let's compare that to bits and pieces of the animal story. All right, so human beings aren't angels. We're made a little lower than the angels. We have bodies, and our bodies are good. But we're not animals. We're not just bodies. So let's talk about the animal story. Now, again, this is Mike Erre's filtering of like vast amounts of like highbrow scholarship. And so you don't have to agree with this characterization at all. But there's a phrase that I've come to think kind of speaks to the sexual story, the way that Gnosticism sort of undergirds the evangelical story. Oh, look at Seth Erre modeling Voxology merch.
Mike,
yes, son.
let's have a great announcement.
You have a great announcement?
Yes. Two fucks on the podcast.
Woo! He just put on his hat. Nice job, buddy. I hope he's not learning some of these words that I'm using as he's in the other room. So this phrase is used, or like this idea is found in like Charles Taylor and Alistair McIntyre. It's called expressive individualism. And so it's a view of human identity that says, I am utterly autonomous and can define meaning, purpose, and identity for myself. Mm-hmm. So it's individualistic in the sense that it wants no outside influence. And it's expressive in the sense that meaning is found in the fulfillment of personal desire.
So you called it expressive individualism?
Individualism. Yeah, and it's called a lot of different things. And these are the stories. These are kind of the assumptions that undergird this. We are not our own, or excuse me, we are each our own, right? I was thinking I listened to I Am Mine by Pearl Jam earlier today as I was working on this. And he's like, we are born and we are die. The in-between is mine. I am mine. That is beautifully expressing one of the major assumptions of human identity and what human beings are, is that they are solitary, autonomous individuals. We are self-determining and self-creating. Freedom is the absence of limits. I choose my purpose, define my identity, and interpret my own experience. I select my values and elect where I belong. I am responsible to find meaning. I am the only one who can set limits on what I can be or do. No one else has the right to define me. Social, moral, natural, or religious values are things to be overcome and obstacles to self-fulfillment. We are autonomous, free, atomistic individuals who find our greatest fulfillment in breaking free from all external norms. No other person or institution has the authority to impose their morality on me. And there are parts of this story I totally agree with. When you compare it to the Gnostic story, like, okay, there's some good correctives here.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, and I don't want to sound like, the get off my lawn guy. But like, I can't watch a Disney movie anymore without this phrase like floating all over, my subconscious, because literally the core of the movie is, you're not being true to yourself. Your family and culture wants you to be something else than what's true to you. And then it's the story about being true to you.
Yeah.
And so even this phrase, true to yourself, is an interesting Western sort of enlightened phrase. Now, again, there are parts of this that are absolutely great. But there's a sense in which there's something that's deeply lost in having the self be the center, and the idea that constraints are always bad, and that freedom is freedom from something, not freedom to something or freedom for something. And scholars have characterized this in a lot of different ways. Charles Taylor talks about like the disenchantment of the world and the fact that the transcendent frame of human reference regarding the divine has been replaced by an immanent frame of reference, which is just me and, the horizons of my brain, my imagination, my desires and preferences or whatever. Another scholar talks about how the first cultural world that our humans inhabited was a cultural world of pagan myth. And that in that world, there was sacred order to things. Whether that world was, pagan divinities or Roman religion or whatever, like there was a sacred order. That first cultural world was replaced by a second cultural world, which was the Christian world story, right? And again, we're just talking about the West here. But the idea is that the sacred ordering that pagan mythology provided was replaced by a sacred ordering under the banner of the Christian church. These days, we have a third world, cultural world, characterized by the individual self, this idea of expressive individualism, which throws out any notion of divine order and is committed, I'm quoting here, to the revolutionary demolition of the theological and moral order that formed the social imagination of the second and first worlds. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So this, I mean, again, this is so easy to take shots at, right? And I even hate using some of these words because I can hear them, used by Christians in very unsophisticated pop culture sort of, making fun of the believe in yourself, follow your heart kind of motif. But because this view of being human is ascendant right now, it does kind of, when you step back and think about it, it does kind of sound like everything that we hear. And, the hero's journey is the hero to be true to the journey to be true to yourself.
Right.
And when you kind of focus on that, that frame of reference, it's easy to have an unspiritualized or under-spiritualized view of sex, right?
Yeah.
Because you belong to you.
Yeah.
Outside of consent, what other order could possibly be placed on a person regarding sexuality, right? So if Piper illustrated the angel view, here's a tweet from Planned Parenthood: "Don't yuck someone else's yum. Everyone deserves the freedom to explore their own sexuality free of shame and stigma." And even in the church, we'd all look at that and say, well, yeah. Right? I mean, if it's the choice between that view or the Gnostic purity code, I'm going to go this way. Easy. And not surprisingly, if the angel story with an over-spiritualized view of sex leads to a bounded set focus, here with an under-spiritualized view of sex, it's a fuzzy set focus, right? I mean, we're united in there not being lines.
Right.
And there are, of course, consent being foremost among them, but, even sex with minors, sex with animals. But, it's interesting whether or not there are people marching around saying, hey, all the slippery slopes we identified before have come true.
Right.
So it's only a matter of time. And I have no idea. I don't buy the fear mongering behind all of that.
No.
But I do call, or would want to call into question the view of sexuality that simply says, all it is my yum. You have a different yum, and you have no right to judge mine. And all yums within reason are created equal. It's just preference. And that goes back to the food example that Amy Felker Jones was using, right? It doesn't matter. It's just a private matter of individual preference. And if two people agree, then what is it of your business? And so, you have an under-spiritualized view that there's nothing else happening, a fuzzy set approach. So it's not surprising that an under-spiritualized view of sex, because that's really what it is. And it's what we talked about with Corinth, right? The food is for the body is for food. And so, of course, if you're hungry, eat. If you're thirsty, drink. It's like, this is what bodies do.
Yeah, don't yuck someone else's yum.
That's it, baby. And hello, Seth.
Hello, Seth, me.
Yeah, you are Seth. Absolutely. All right, can you give me a couple more minutes? I'm almost done.
Yeah.
Okay. Put that back in my ear.
Okay.
Okay. Hugo, do the floppy.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Hit the theme song.
Hit the theme song.
Hit that chocolate milk theme song too.
Hit the chocolate milk theme song?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And so there's a sense in which, not surprisingly, right? You would, if you're looking at the set theory that we examined episodes and episodes ago, if an over-spiritualized view leads to a bounded set, then this is, of course, a fuzzy set. Mm-hmm. It's the elimination of all the boundaries and the lines with kind of the bare minimum approach of consent. And consent can be spelled out a lot of different ways. You can even talk about consent. Like, I remember there was this picture of a consent code from Antioch College years ago that was like, here's what consent means. You have to ask, if you initiate every new level, you have to receive verbal, approval. Groans or yeses don't count. Like it was a very bounded way of like talking about consent. And I'm all for consent. Absolutely. I mean, the scripture is full of reciprocity, mutuality, and so on. So I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm just saying, what else could you base it on if your view of the human person is just, we are appetites and hormones? And it's like, spring break. Well, of course they're going to do it. So we just got to give them condoms. Like there's it's foreign to even think about people restraining sexual desire.
Yeah. Well, everything is two-dimensional on both sides of that fence. Like
that's the point we're going at. Yeah. That's the point. Yes. Neither, I think, embodies the full humanness of the biblical story and the invitation to consider sexuality as part of what it is to be human in God's world.
Yeah. So if sin, again, just because I like to weave this back in every now and then, is about missing the mark of being fully human, that would make sense in this conversation of on both sides of that.
Yeah.
Are ways in which we are not embodying or fulfilling or restoring humanity and other people, or dignity, or offering restoration or dignity or fullness of someone else's humanness.
Right.
In this whole thing.
That's exactly right. So if the Gnostic, angel view told us to fear sexual desire, the animal view just says follow it wherever it goes. And you don't have to spend a lot of time questioning that. I mean, obviously there are sexual addictions and sexual abuse, and that can lead you into trouble. But by and large, it's a bodily thing. And who are you to yuck someone else's yum? And so, if
terrible phrase,
such a terrible phrase. I just thought it's so perfectly embodied. And so John Tyson, who was a pastor, I think he still is in New York, said there's the third option between fear, desire, and follow desire, and that's form desire. Desire can be formed, the spiritual formation of desire. And I was never taught about any of this. And there is a different way of beyond purity codes and consent. There's the invitation to wisdom.
Yeah.
And there's beyond bounded sets and fuzzy sets, there's centered sets. What does a centered set approach look like to sexuality? And so I think, and again, I mean, agree, disagree. I always feel weird putting all this stuff out there because of how all of it's been abused or misused or whatever.
No, I think you're doing a good job, because you're building a platform to start to ask questions from, or to with a direction on how to kind of re-engage this conversation, rather than just saying, this, this way wasn't right, this way wasn't right, let me tell you the exact way.
Yes.
You're inviting us into a conversation that I think is very important, that is, again, 3-dimensional or 4-dimensional, and not...
Well, hopefully. That, because we haven't yet talked about, how far, and although, I mean, when I was, talking to my kids, and this is so different from how I was told to parent. Invited them.
I think you should save this. I think you should save this, and we should spend time on this.
Oh, okay.
Because I think there's a lot, because every time we have this conversation, we get a lot of emails that are like, okay, then what?
Okay.
Like, what do I do with my desire? And if I'm not looking at gatekeeping, and I'm not looking at boundaries, or I'm not looking at lines, then what?
Yeah. Yes.
And so that's on the front side of the question. And the back side of the question, with all of us that grew up and are carrying shame into our marriages and that kind of stuff, the question then becomes, well, how do I look backward, or how do I reconvene my understanding now, so that I can have a healthy sexual relationship with my partner? So
good.
That's a very big, and it's like the center set stuff actually, I think, is the perfect metaphor or way to kind of approach this conversation, because it's not redefining the boundary or the fuzzy. It's saying no, that's the wrong vantage point to begin from. So let's talk about a healthy.
That's right. What is a fully human?
Yes.
What is a fully human, embodied spirituality approach look like to sex?
And not that we know the full answer to that, but I think having a nuanced conversation about it would be helpful. It'd be helpful for me.
All the work that we just did was designed to get us to that question.
Yeah.
Because that, for me, I always started with behavior. And
that's what we were told.
Yeah. And even in therapy, as I'm going over this stuff with my therapist, he's not like spending any time on that. None of it's correcting behavior. It's all like, how do you see yourself, and what messages have you internalized?
That's the third piece that I wanted to ask, and we can pursue in this other conversation, is the idea of individualism as individuals. Because often when the individualistic nature gets said, no, that's not how we are meant to operate, it gets really confusing for people who have thoughts in their heads. You know what I mean? Like who are, I don't know. So having a healthy understanding of what it means to be an individual within a communal unit.
No, that's it. Because you're absolutely right. My body isn't my family's or my church's.
Right.
But Paul will also say your body isn't made for porneia, it's made for the Lord.
Yeah, so this is a very nuanced, again, three-dimensional conversation about what it means to be an individual but not be individualistic. So all those questions I think would be really fun to explore.
Well said. Okay, so here's what we're going to do, dear listeners, if you've made it this far. Next episode, we have an interview with Caitlin Shess regarding her new book, The Ballot and the Bible, which, dude, it's a killer. And then we'll come back and we'll try to present a view of sexuality that's embodied, that's center set, that's wisdom, and that doesn't fear or follow desire, but seeks to see it formed around our full humanness. And we don't have, my goodness, my therapist and many other people close to me can tell you we haven't got this nailed.
No.
But the questions that this leads me to feel so much healthier than the questions of previous.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, anywho, I hope this is helpful. And, back to our emailer, the goal is to create a hospitable place where we can just be curious about the things that we're being told and immersed in. Yeah. And consider communal imaginative possibilities where we can provide a counter narrative even to some narratives in the church,
Yep.
So anyway, all right, Seth, you want to do Shema, buddy?
Yes.
All right, let's do it. Ready?
Shema
Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord God, the Lord. Okay. I think we're blowing out our microphones.
Yes.
Now say it. Love the Lord your God, with your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Bye.
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 Thank you for listening to this conversation. Voxology is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that is supported by listeners just like yourself. If you'd like to partner with us, you can do so at patreon.com/Voxology. You can also join the community and hang out and chat with us on the socials. Facebook.com/Voxology Podcast and on Instagram @Voxology. Thank you for walking the long road with us.